I remember the exact moment London stopped feeling like a city and started feeling like a target. I was 12, lying in bed, trying to fall asleep to the soft crackle of our radio downstairs when the sirens began. Not one siren, many. A rising, howling sound that didn't ask for your attention. It took it. My mother's footsteps hit the stairs like hammer blows. She didn't say, "Get up." She just grabbed my arm, and the fear in her hand said everything. Before that night, my world was small. Our street, our front steps, the bakery on the corner that smelled warm, even in winter. I knew the war existed, of course. Everyone did. But war was a word in newspapers and a voice on the radio. It was something happening over there. That evening we had done ordinary things, washed dishes, folded laundry, listened to the announcer's careful voice, and I believed, like children often do, that ordinary routines could protect us. Outside, the street filled with people as if the houses had exhaled them. Men carried bundles, women carried children, and children carried whatever they believed mattered most: blankets, books, a single tin of biscuits. I remember looking at the faces around me and realizing something strange. No one looked brave. They looked focused, like a crowd moving through a burning building, pretending the smoke wasn't there so their legs would keep working. The underground smelled of damp stone and too many bodies. We sat on the platform with hundreds of others, shoulder to shoulder, listening to the distant thunder that wasn't thunder. Some people tried to sleep, some tried to pray, some tried to joke in whispers. I watched a little girl, maybe 5, hug a teddy bear so tightly her knuckles turned white. And I thought, with the confidence of a 12-year-old, that if she could hold on, so could I. At some point, I climbed a few steps and looked up toward the street-level entrance. Through the gaps, I could see the sky flickering like a storm made of fire instead of rain. Searchlights moved slowly, hunting shapes above the clouds. Then the ground trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. People didn't scream right away. First, they went quiet. A terrible, respectful quiet, like the city itself was listening for the next blow. Morning came, but it didn't feel like morning. The air looked gray and tasted bitter. When we finally walked back toward home, the street didn't look familiar anymore. It was the same place, rearranged by violence. A house that had always been there was simply missing, like someone had erased it. I kept thinking stupidly that we must have taken a wrong turn, that London couldn't just lose buildings in one night. Near the corner, where our neighbor's door used to be, there was only broken brick and a dark hole. A woman stood there calling a name again and again, her voice getting smaller each time, as if the ruins were swallowing it. I held my breath without realizing it. That was the first moment I understood. War doesn't only kill people. It removes parts of your world so cleanly that your mind refuses to believe it. Firefighters moved through the smoke like exhausted giants. Their faces were smeared with ash, and their uniforms looked heavy with water and soot. They didn't look like heroes from posters. They looked like men who hadn't slept in days. I watched them aim their hoses at flames that seemed too large to fight, and I thought about how unfair it was. How the fire didn't care if you were good or bad, it just consumed. That night in the shelter, a stranger handed me a mug of tea. It wasn't sweet or special, just warm, and that warmth proved the world hadn't ended. He only nodded, like we were teammates in a game we never chose. I learned then, small kindness is resistance. A few days later, there was a crash site outside the neighborhood. People whispered about it like it was a ghost. I saw twisted metal and smoke, and soldiers keeping everyone back. Someone said the plane was German. Someone else said the pilot might still be inside. I expected to feel pobeda. I expected to feel happy. Instead, I felt sick, because for the first time the war had a shape on the ground, and it looked fragile. Years passed. The war ended. London rebuilt itself the way people do, brick by brick, memory by memory. But that night stayed. As an adult, I found an old photograph in a box. A street of ruins, smoke in the distance, people walking like shadows. I stared at it for a long time, trying to remember the boy I was. I could recall his fear easily. What I struggled to recall was what he thought the future would look like. If you ask me what I learned from the Blitz, I won't give you a grand lesson about nations or strategy. I'll tell you about a siren that stole the air from my lungs. I'll tell you about a teddy bear crushed against a child's chest in the underground. I'll tell you about a mug of tea in trembling hands. Because that is how war lives in memory, not as maps, but as moments. And some nights, even decades later, I still hear the sirens begin. And I am 12 again.